So, welcome everybody to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo and Going Bold Network. The information and opinions expressed on the show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. My name's Tina Huggins, your divorce coach specialist and restorative family mediator. And at this time, I would normally introduce my co-host, who was my husband, Joe Huggins. But as many of you know, my Joe passed away earlier this year. And so I am now here alone. So I'm alone, but I have two wonderful guests that are joining me here today. And I'm honored to support this work and honored to talk about my wonderful Joe and the experiences that I've been through since his passing. And so I'm joined here today by Herb Knoll, and he is a widow's advocate. So we're going to find a little bit more about that. And then I'm joined by one of my really good friends from a long time past, Jase Parsons, and he lost his wife, Karen, just months before I lost my Joe. And so we've kind of walked this path a little bit together as we started processing how life is without our significant others, the people we love so much. So before we get started, I want to kind of read a little bit from Herb's bio, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jase. So Herb was a bank executive and was known as the man who could get the job done. When the Western New York native, which is where he's from, lost his wife, Michelle, to pancreatic cancer in 2008, he found few resources to help him recover from his grief. Knoll began researching the world of widowers. The more he learned about their plight, the high suicide rates and all of the problems that they dealt with in the emotional level, the more he became motivated to write a book for the benefits that could benefit the fellow widowers. At this time, former bank president, marketer, and professional speaker turned widow advocate, and is now helping widowed men as he goes through his work. And we'll get to hear more about that. Then Jase Parsons. And if you guys have watched any of the other shows, I had this wonderful painting that was in behind me of a buffalo. Jase's nephew actually painted that painting. So if you go back through and see any of the videos, you can look at that painting. I've known Jase since I was 13. He was an upper rank student at the time I joined Taekwondo, and then became one of the instructors later on as a black belt. He came from a small farm in southern Colorado and then moved to Albuquerque, and somewhere around there married his wife. And his job took him into Dallas, which is where he's been living for this time frame, and now trying to get his life together as he moves forward as well. Jase received a BA at Adams State, an MBA, and at UNM, and recently Jase's life, like I said, changed because of the loss of his wife. And so we're going to talk about that. So Herb, I would like to have you kind of explain a little bit about your support group and what you've done and why.
Okay, well, I'm happy to do that, and thank you for the invitation. It's nice to meet you all. The year was 2008, and I was living in San Antonio. My wife was then a patient for pancreatic cancer. We lost her during my stay in San Antonio. In about 4 months after, I was working at a bank in San Antonio, and one of my staff members came into my office, a young girl, and she said, "We miss your laughter." And then I realized that I wasn't well, that I was grieving, and I suffered. So I went looking for help, and I went to my church. I went to the Veterans Administration because I'm a disabled vet, and I went to Barnes & Noble. And I asked the man at Barnes & Noble, "What do you have for a new widower?" And he looked on his search engine and looked up at me and said, "Mister, I don't have a thing for you." And I said, "That can't be." So he said, well, let's go to the bookcase. So we went to the bookcase. There were 15 books there, every one of them written for widows, not one for widowers. So I knew right there and then that I was going to quit my career of 38 years and rededicate my life to helping widowed men. And I did. Today, I operate the Widowers Support Network. I've written a book, The Widower's Journey, which is very popular. It gets 4.5 stars on Amazon. I have a currently number 4 rated podcast called The Widower's Journey for widows and widowers out of 60 that are available. Number 4. I have 2 Facebook pages. And when I created the first one, I was getting only women. I said, well, this isn't working. So I created a second one, and I only allow men into it. And it is the best thing that I've done thus far, I think, because I've given the men a platform where they can ask any question they want, and they're among peers. And nobody is judged, and everybody is helped. And my reach on my ministry of sorts is 44 countries and thousands of men. I also have a website, and I have a bunch of widowers, mostly widowers, about 40 that have contributed to my library. And I have about 560 articles that you can go to my website and you can search by subject matter. So if you want to talk about dating, you can get those articles. If you want to talk about cooking, raising your health, your finances, also, you name it, you can search by subject matter. So that's another strong tool. And this is what I do. And every week I get about a dozen new men who discover me. I have never advertised, and I've got thousands of them out there from every walk of life imaginable. I just had a man join my group. I can't believe it. He's a mathematician who graduated from MIT. Can you imagine what it goes through his brain on a given day? I mean, we have doctors, we have professors, we have scientists, we've got laborers, we've got soldiers. I've even had a Catholic priest who was first widowed and then went into the priesthood. I have about 30 clergy and pastors from all over the country in North America and England, who participate in my forums regularly. So this is what I do, and I do it for free.
It's amazing. And I know you and I got to talk, and I really love the fact that you focus towards men. Men don't have the type of support, not even in divorce, that women have. There's always something there for women everywhere on every topic, and you don't see that for men. So thank you very much for doing that.
Girls have their girlfriends. Boys don't have boyfriends. Boys don't talk. Boys don't share. They think that's somehow demeaning, that they're exposing their weaknesses, which is a bunch of garbage. And the men are in danger many times because they're impulsive. Men are fixers. They like to fix things. When the wife says the light bulb is out, that's a clue she wants it fixed. So the man fixes it. Well, when a man looks in the mirror and sees that he's widowed, he says, I'm broken. I need to fix myself. What's missing? A woman. And they frequently go out and marry the first woman that they date. Big mistake. Big mistake. In high school, I had a different girlfriend every month, and it's much more complicated now because we all have baggage. The men have baggage. The women have baggage. They have finance histories. They have traditions in the family. They have children. They have obligations. I mean, it's not an easy task. And they impulsively go too fast. Men generally do that. And I try to slow them down.
Yeah, I don't think that it's just the men, but as I've gone through my process, of course, Jase has helped me because he's been just steps ahead of me. And then I have another woman who's older than me by far in Canada that lost his wife 15 years ago. And it is you guys that are helping me walk through this. My friend in Canada, he sends a message to me every morning and every night, just some supportive message about how I'm strong enough and I can do this or whatever he feels he needs to say. And then my talk with you helped me as I move forward. And then Jase, you can kind of tell us how things started for you so that Herb has an idea of where you're at.
Okay. It's interesting that Herb mentioned suicide, because I used to tell Karen that the only reason I stayed alive was for her. I've battled, as Tina knows, I've battled depression since I was just a kid and have taken antidepressants a good part of my life. So then Karen passed away, and that's the easy solution, isn't it? To just go ahead and commit suicide, and there you go. Then you can move on, or whatever you believe. But it was a challenge to reestablish some purpose, and I'm retired, so that wasn't work for me. But I live in Dallas, in the Metroplex here, one of the largest cities. Dallas isn't all that big of a city, but the Metroplex is huge. And I'm, like Tina said, I'm a farm kid, so living in the city is not where I belong. I just don't fit here. So my purpose now is to get out of here. So I put my house on the market, and it's been on the market since July 5th, and just trying to get reestablished. I need to reestablish myself, and that's sometimes a long process, I guess. But
and complicated.
If and it's complicated too, to just know who I would be otherwise. I was married 38 years. So then all of a sudden that part of my life is just gone. And well, who am I now? Who was I before? And that's where Tina came in, because we've known each other since both of us were just children, and she knows me. So it was really useful and helpful to have that kind of input, her input, to get me back on my feet. I think. I guess I'm lucky. I don't, what you said, Herb, about men not having boyfriends that they can chat with is true.
Right. Yeah. Or they're reluctant to talk.
Right.
You know, they don't want to show their vulnerability.
No. And especially if to people that you've just met, or maybe you've only, like I'm 65, maybe I've known people 20 years. Well, that's not very long. I'm also lucky enough to have guys who I went to high school with who are still very close friends, and we have grown up together and talked about things. So it helped to have them around also. But it's been quite a battle.
On my podcast number 23, and I encourage you to listen to it, I interviewed 4 widowers, one from Australia, one from England, one from Scotland, and one from India, all at the same time. And what we discussed is the cultural differences between how their nations treat widowed men, how America treats widowed men. and America pales by comparison.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Americans are cruel to widowed men. So I would encourage you to listen to that. And I also want to mention to you, I actually wrote an article once called "Men Need to Have Purpose," and you just use that word. And men without purpose are adrift, and they're insecure because they don't have purpose.
Right.
So we can help you find that if you want to join my group. It's like I mentioned, it's free. And also, you live in a particular city where we have a subgroup that meets once a month on, I think, Thursday nights for dinner. And it's a great group, and they're all widowers. And there's about 12 of them. And they meet pretty close to where you are.
Huh, how about that?
I'll
Well,
have to get that to you.
I'll get that address here after a bit. But it's a strange transition that I certainly wasn't ready for. You know, that my nephew lost his wife to cancer, and she was sick for probably almost 3 years. So he knew that was coming. My wife was healthy on Thursday and died the next Thursday. So that was a little more brutal. And I think, I don't know, you know, you care for someone for 2 years who's dying, that's also quite brutal. But just the suddenness of it was hard to deal with. And it just it leaves you spinning, like Tina knows when Joe passed, healthy guy, and then he's not healthy. So then all of a sudden you have all these decisions to come up with, and they're tough. Probably the spookiest for me was the fact that Karen kept all of our financial records.
I knew that was coming.
Yep. She paid the bills. She kept me from buying crap that I didn't need. She, you know, and then she's gone. Well, I don't even know the passwords to her computer. So that's where I started, you know, just trying to figure out why I was spending so much money on streaming TV and just crazy things that I hadn't thought of because I didn't need to. I didn't need to think of that stuff because she did it all. But that's and I have warned people, don't sit aside and let someone else do your finances for you, because that may not happen tomorrow. So
right. What how long ago did your wife pass?
she passed away January 25. So
Okay.
8 months.
Okay. It'll get better over time,
That's
but
what they keep saying.
but don't expect it to go away. It won't go away. It'll change. It'll take on different characteristics.
Right.
And what's wonderful about the human body is that the brain has a way of tucking away sorrowful memories and put them in the back, and your better memories will take center stage in the front of your brain. Mark my words, it's going to be
I'm
like
ready
that.
for that to happen anytime, Herb. If you've got a switch, you know, let's switch that. But yeah, and that's that was a hard spot. And then you're left with all the stuff in the house. My wife was a bit of not a hoarder, but she was right on the edge of maybe hoarding a little bit. There were she'd buy Christmas gifts and put them away for later. Like she'd buy Christmas gifts in March and, oh, that'll be great for Christmas. Well, I found Christmas gifts that we had bought years ago.
It's,
Stuffed in the back closet, and oh boy. And every time you find something like that, it's just like a gut punch. So
yeah.
that's a tough,
Yep. So
tough.
I haven't found, I'm being affected so differently. And so some of it's the same is what Jason's explaining. And I find stuff like Joe was very big on cards. He loved to buy cards. He'd spend hours hunting for the right card. So he didn't even have to really write much in them because they said what he wanted them to say, right? And I have found those cards and I've read what he put, which was a short little bleep, but I can't read the cards yet. But I did save them and have them here with me in the camper. And then I am personally having something that you guys don't have a clue what happens with women's bodies, but my hormonal body has changed. So I've reverted backwards. And so things are completely different. I mean, my hair is different, my skin's different, everything is different. It's just a way weird thing.
Women have complicated toys.
Complicated. Women are just complicated, period.
That's true.
I just saw a cartoon recently that just was hysterical. I'm a man with 7 sisters and 2 daughters. And the cartoon was, once we understand, us men, once we understand why pizza comes in a box and it's made round and it's served in a triangle, then we're prepared to understand women.
Good luck with that.
So you make it round, then a box, then a triangle.
Yep.
Good one. Hadn't heard that. So yeah, there's just so many parts and pieces. And, so one of the, since I talked with you, Herb, about how those people from other countries process things, I know with widowers, but once I learned that, I started paying really close attention. So I talk to people all over the world, and those people that come from a different culture, whether they're here in the US or whether they're from another part of the world, they all ask me to tell my story. And I find that so awesome that I get to tell, like I had a gentleman earlier who wanted to hear the love story of how my husband and I met. He's been following me for a couple of years now. And he just said, I've watched and I noticed that you had this love and now you don't have this love. And so he asked me to tell my love story. And yes, it kind of pulls at the heartstrings, but it makes my ability to deal with things a little bit better.
I'm sure. You're making me think. And I wanted to offer something to your other guest. When you get around to dating, if you ever choose to, not everybody has to, it's not a command performance, but you may find that you were interested in that at some point. Go slow, because in my book, I had a gentleman who was in my audience one day, and I was talking about predator women.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up to me and handed me his phone number, and he said, please call me. So I called him a couple of days later, and I was writing my book at that time. And he said, I want to share a story with your readers. I'm a stockbroker. I understand money. And yet I fell prey to a predator. And I married a woman quickly, and she spent $1.2 million in 2 years.
Oh.
Now, there are predator men too. So don't, but you need to be alert. And sometimes the men say, well, I'm thinking clearly. My feet are properly anchored. And I tell them all the time, no, you're not. And no, they're not. I said, you're kidding yourself, because, we do have baggage, and sometimes the baggage isn't adaptable. you know, different things in our lives. So I encourage the men to go slowly and date a lot, date a lot of different girls. Now I had one man tell me, I was having coffee with him, and he was in my book also. And he said, I have a date tonight. And I said, well, that's great. And he said, I've already met her. Okay, what do you think? He says, she's not like my wife. And I said, good. You don't want the same thing. You're not out to replace your wife. Let your wife sit on a pedestal in your memory and worship her there, but look for something different. Now, my deceased wife was Ukrainian, and my new wife is Cuban. I mean, there aren't two countries more far apart.
Right.
But I said, every woman will feel different in your arms. Every woman will feel different when you kiss her. Every woman will smell different. Every woman will have different elevations of her eye contact. Every woman will have different things that she likes to do for fun and introduce you to. I mean, don't get confused between infatuation and love.
Right. Good advice.
Because men think they're all the same. Infatuation or flirting, or it's not all the same.
No.
And over 50% of all widowed men who get married end in divorce.
Yeah.
Now, when you get divorced, your wife left you all the assets of the family. This lady isn't going to do that. She's going to take you to the cleaners.
Right.
So women have created their own bad reputation, and we men need to be alerted to that.
Right.
Sorry about that.
It's all your fault.
It's all my fault. All our faults.
And the last years, the whole time that I lived in Dallas, I worked for Social Security in an office where we pushed paper. So most of the staff was and is women. So by the time I retired, was a supervisor, and I got fairly close to this group of women, and we're still close. I've been retired 15 years or so. So we went to dinner a while back, a few days ago. And one of the women lives far north of here, drove down to my house, and then I drove us down to dinner. So we arrived at dinner together. Oh boy, now you got something going on, you know. So everybody, all these women have to know, you know, well, are you two an item? Are you together? Are you? Well, no, you know, I'm leaving here, and she's staying. So, but it's interesting how important that is to other people, whether I'm dating or am I interested in someone. And I don't care if they know. No, I'm not gonna get real interested in someone right off the bat, because I know myself. I can't do that. Tina knows that. So it's an odd thing. My nephew, who lost his wife to cancer, is almost consumed by the idea of finding someone. Now it's like 2.5 years since his wife passed, and he'll date anybody almost, you know. It's what are you doing? And so
I've also found the top 2 complaints of widowed men. You want to guess what they are? Number 1 complaint is loneliness.
Yeah.
I had a professor who tells me he plays cooking shows on his TV because he's looking for diversion, you know. The number 2 complaint, and this one was new to me. This one sort of surprised me. Abandonment. So men are not frequently are not invited to the same social gatherings that they would have been if they still had a wife. And they literally get abandoned. And that is a big, big problem. And that's part of the American culture.
Yeah.
That's what these other nations were citing.
And I think that happens.
Yeah, and
Go ahead, Tina.
go ahead, Jake.
I think that happens a couple of times in life, maybe. I remember when I was younger and my friends began marrying, then they had their lives and they had their kids and they had each other as couples, and Jase was kind of the lone single.
Yeah.
And now it's the same, you know, my married friends still have their each other and this and that, but it's almost worse because now they feel sorry, you know. Oh well, lost Karen, you know. So that's but something that reminded me of your story, Herb, was that the first 3 or 4 months after Karen passed, I felt so insecure that because she had done everything, she had been the banker, the financier, the house maintenance person. I did most of the maintenance, but she told me to do it, you know. Then I didn't have that organization anymore. So can I do that? I don't know. I've never done that. I don't know if I can. Now I'm a MBA manager, had people work for me and all kinds of stuff. But can I manage my own household? Well, I don't know. I don't even know the passwords to the computer. How am I going to do any of this? And that was a real hurdle. That's something that Tina helped me with.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I can see that happening. You know, that's why we teach our men on our Facebook page. We have an editorial calendar. So on Sunday we open the week with we teach you how to cook. So we do. We and I try to pick meals that I think men would enjoy, you know. And then we talk sports, and then we talk we give time to the Christian community, and
Right.
we put something nice up on the Christians. On Monday we talk finances. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we have contributed articles. On Wednesday we talk about your health and different ailments to be on the clue for, to look out for. On Friday we pay tribute to the Jewish community. We do the sports again. We welcome all of our new members for the current week. On Saturday, we do Handyman's Corner and little things around the house and the car. So it's a mixed bag, you know, and you need all of it. It's not one dimensional. You have a lot of different things that you're concerned about as a widower, and we try to address most of them.
Nice.
What I find interesting from my group is that I have men who are in their 80s and I have men in their 20s who are widowed.
Wow.
And about 30 to 35% of them are under the age of 40. And they lost their wife to cancer, to car accidents, motorcycle accidents, suicide. One was murdered. You know, I mean, and they never ask, when they ask a question, and they come up with some great questions. When they ask a question, they never ask the people who are giving them advice, by the way, how old are you?
Right.
They don't ask that. So you have 20-year-olds advising an 80-year-old how to get through the rough days. I mean, it's remarkable to witness. I mean, we'll get you set up so you can enjoy it.
All right. That would help, I think. It's an odd path that we follow after the woman goes.
And many men are grateful that they were the survivor because they wouldn't want their wife to experience that pain of being the survivor.
And see,
that's the way I am. Sorry, Jase.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that's the way I am. I know my husband, much like you, Jase, I took care of him. He deserved that. He came from a very abusive relationship prior to ours. And I just felt he needed to be put on a pedestal and treated well. And so I did everything, just like your wife did, Jase. And so I know that had I passed, his grief would have been so intense, and he couldn't have done what I had to do with the move and everything. His kids would have had to come and taken care of that for and with him. So although I would never want him to have been dead for any of the reasons, especially as children, I'm just glad he's not experiencing the grief that I've had to go through and what you've gone through, Jase.
Yeah, there's that side, and then there's also my thought about Karen is that she was the one who enjoyed life. She looked forward to each day, and she's not anymore. I, on the other hand, I can give it, take it, or leave it. You know, if the train hits me today, I'm done.
No.
So it doesn't seem quite fair to me that she's done and doesn't get to do the things that she wanted to do. We have a 5-year-old great nephew that we're just waiting to see grow up, and of course he's not going to know her, and that's where I am with that whole thing. Yeah, she would have hopefully grieved me, but she would have also had much to do in the remainder of her life, I think. So that's something that I have to deal with. It's
let me just say, I am a devout Catholic, and I don't, depending on what your religious beliefs are, if you do believe, give your grief to God.
Yeah, it's easier said than done.
Understood.
Yeah, but I work toward that.
Yeah.
And each of us have our own visualization of what God or higher power is, and being able to give that up. And I can say, you know, the prayers that came to me, and we're pushing our timeline here, but the prayers, I was in the shower shortly after Joe had died, a few weeks, and first praying, talking to God, talking to Joe, whatever I was doing in the shower, I tilted my head, closed my eyes for a moment, and I literally felt the wings of an angel come around me, and I heard and felt every single prayer that was being said for me. And for me, that was the moment where I knew that I was going to be okay to get from here to there. There's been a few days in there where, just like you, Jase, I could care less whether the train hit me or not. And in fact, here, let me stand in front of the train. You know, I've had a couple of those days.
Yeah, they come and go. And it's, of course, as I mentioned before, I've dealt with depression for a long time, and those days do come, and tomorrow will be better. But it's a hard, those days are hard, and there's no one that can tell you, oh, well, that's all in your head. No, it's not, man. There is pain, and you just have to kind of focus on something else, and it will pass. But
Write a book.
there's an idea.
It really does help. I'm writing one now, but mine's
Oh,
on
yeah.
abuse. It doesn't have to do with this, but it really does help. It helps you
It- it-
process
it
those
took-
kinds of things.
It took me 7 years to write my book. And if I may tell you a little story about it, I identified about 40 men, and they came from all walks of life, and they were all widowers, and I wanted to track both the short-term and the long-term impact of becoming widowed has on their life. So it took me 7 years to
Right.
get the long-term.
Sure.
And the men used to ask me, "Are you ever going to publish this book?" And I probably was ready to quit a dozen times. I was just fed up with it.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep all the horses in play and all the personalities. Drove me nuts. So I was at church one day, and I'm ready to quit. It was
Right.
October of 2016. And I'm walking in the church, and I said, "God, if you want this book, you're going to need to send me a sign, because I'm not likely to do it." So I go in the church, and the priest gives a sermon that was custom made for my ears. And I walk outside the church, and I look up in the sky, and I said, "Okay, Lord, you're going to get your book." And it was published 6 months later.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
And
So, yeah.
It's reached a lot of people. So anyhow.
And it needs to, because there's a lot of people there's just so many men, like I kept saying earlier, you guys just don't have the support that women have. And so being able to state that this is here, this is for you, is super important, because Joe was on the show. Joe was my co-host because we had the show because of his story about the abuse, and he wanted to help men with that. So in helping the men, now we're in our wind down phase here. So Herb, I want you to kind of tell people, your contact information is going to be below and in the show notes, but tell us how people can reach you and how they can find your support group.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to mention that I take calls too. Now, I'm not a licensed anything, but I have a lot of experience, and I'm willing to share it, and there's no charge. And I get calls all the time. Okay. So my book is The Widower's Journey, and it's available on Amazon. I have a website called the Widowers, with an S, Widowers Support Network.com. And that has all sorts of resources available for widows and widowers on it, including 560 articles. Then I have 2 Facebook pages. One is Widowers Support Network. That is available to women and men. Just Widowers Support Network. The second one, the more lively one, is for men only, and it's Widowers Support Network - members only. And that's the good one. The podcast is the Widower's Journey podcast. And that's the one that's currently rated number 4. So it's all free. Everything I do is free.
Very
Awesome. Awesome. Very good. So for those of you who don't already know this about me, I'm a certified divorce coach. That means that I'm trained in divorce and its complexities. I specialize in high conflict divorce, especially that with toxic narcissist partners with abuse. Okay. So that's super important, because when we're in abusive situations, getting out of that is tricky. And the most dangerous time in any of those relationships is the moment that you go to leave. So you can reach me at coachtinalynn@gmail.com. That's coach, C-O-A-C-H, Tina, T-I-N-A, Lynn, L-Y-N-N, @gmail.com. And I'm on just about every social media. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and you can hunt for Tina Huggins through there, or Divorce Tina on some of the podcast or some of the platforms out there. And you can also go to my website, which is divorcecoachspecialist.com. Again, that's divorcecoachspecialist.com. And I know we didn't talk about this because we were dealing with the grief and understanding the grief, and Jase was really wonderful to come on and take part in this. And so I appreciate both of you guys. But as we go through a domestic violence situation, we have to know how to get out of that. And so if you're in a violent situation right now, here in the US, call 911. And if you're in the UK, it's 999. Once you get the police there, press the charges, keep the charges on. That is the one thing that was so important for him that he did not do. He let the charges fall off and then ended up in a worse abuse. So make sure that once that's your key out of that relationship. Get those charges pressed, get a restraining order in place, a protection order, and keep following suit. If you get a divorce coach, they can help you go through that process. Also, the domestic violence hotline number is 1-800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. Make sure that you call, make sure that you get the help that you need, because getting out of this is not easy. Dealing with the grief is not easy. So make sure that you communicate with that. So thank you very much, Herb and Jase, for being with me today.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very, very good. Okay. And we will see you all next week. Thank you very much.